All right, welcome everyone. In a few minutes, 1 or 2 minutes, we will begin our webinar, the first in a series of 6. All right, Eileen, it's a little afternoon. What do you think about starting?
Go ahead.
All right. This is the first of 6 webinars in a series of 6 webinars. Close, Survive, or Thrive, the Small Business Challenge of Today. We welcome our presenter today, Eileen Buchanan. Eileen has been a SCORE volunteer for 14 years and has held most volunteer positions in SCORE. Currently, she's chapter chair of the Southwest Florida SCORE chapter. Prior to that, Eileen was the founder and president of Fast Track Training, Inc., a company that trains software professionals and managers within government and industry to improve their software process. In the mid-90s, Inc. magazine identified Fast Track as one of the 500 fastest growing privately owned companies in America. Today's presentation, as I mentioned, is the first in a series of 6 weekly webinars. Each webinar that follows will dive more deeply into one of the series of steps outlined today. When you registered for this webinar, you are registered for the entire series, and you will receive reminders each week for each of the upcoming webinars. The link you use today is the same link for the entire series. As you notice, all of you have been muted. We do have a Q&A feature in which you can type your questions, and we will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. After the presentation, you will receive a link to the webinar, which will be hosted on our website. If for some reason you have an audio issue, please feel free to make note of it in the chat section or call the phone number listed below, 929-205-6099, which will also be listed in the chat section. Eileen, have a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinne. And thanks to everybody who joined us today. In SCORE, when we capture information about our clients, we check a box to identify if they're starting a business or if they're in business. Now we see the term restart everywhere. The dictionary defines restart as a new start or beginning. The pandemic and the closures around the world have made you both a startup and an in-business client. You've been put into both boxes. I believe most of you are what I've termed the in-business startup, and this is probably the hardest box to be in. Most of our clients who want to start a business are optimistic, energetic, passionate about their ideas. So sure it will be wildly successful that they may be afraid to even share their idea, afraid someone will steal it. They may have money, but often not enough, and they usually underestimate how much it will take. Do you remember when you first opened your business? So sure it would succeed, but also afraid of quitting your day job, worried about money, being afraid to fail, but still believing you could make it work. I do. If you were one of the lucky ones, you moved into survival mode. Then you laid awake at night doubting yourself, wondering if you made a mistake in starting the business, trying to figure out how to make it succeed, worrying if you would run out of money before you had customers or clients to cover your costs. The business was your baby. You couldn't let it go. Now you're even more afraid to fail. And family and friends that were so excited and encouraging kept asking you how was business, and you lied that business was great, all the time hoping that you would see a light at the end of the tunnel. I did that too. I did it for 2 years. Then if you were lucky enough to move through survival mode, you could pay yourself, you slept at night, you had regular customers or clients that really liked you, your balance sheet was black, not red, you could take a few days off, enjoy yourself. By whatever definition you used to define success, you were succeeding. Maybe you wanted to grow, maybe you didn't, but you were good. I remember that feeling too. But now, something catastrophic has happened, and it's happened to everyone. You fit into both boxes. While you may have been in business for a while, you share many of the challenges of the startup, and you don't really fit into either. It's time for you to honestly assess where you and your business stand. It's time to make your plan. If you want to thrive, if you can thrive, it's time to get rid of the box. This webinar will not have all the answers. Our goal is to ask as many of the right questions as time allows, and hopefully give you some ideas to help you move forward. We want to help you focus on the things that really matter to your business. We want you to try to think like a startup while building on what you already have. So, next slide, will you close, survive, or thrive? I once had a boss who never had a problem. And if you went into his office and told him you had a problem, he would say, there are no problems. There are only opportunities and challenges. Today, I would say we're facing the biggest opportunities and challenges of our lifetime. I want to talk about closing for a bit and start by saying closing is not failing if you do decide to close. You are not a failure, despite how you may feel now. Sometimes the real failure is not closing. Closing is not quitting. It is weighing the pros and cons of closing and deciding that the pros win. Closing may have a lot of benefits. It may conserve cash or reduce debt. It may free up cash if you have saleable assets. It can reduce stress and let you sleep at night. It can give you the time you need to deal with other life challenges. It can free you to move on to new opportunities where you have more passion or energy and more commitment. And like the college graduate who's sad to leave friends and the familiar behind, where graduation marks the end, the word commencement means a new beginning. Closing for some of you is your smartest choice. But don't make that decision yet. You'll hear a lot of ideas that can improve your financial situation. And if you do decide to close, you still need a plan. So don't go away. When you look at surviving and thriving, you will need to take a hard look at your business, your finances, your employees, your customers, your products and services, what you can keep and what needs to change or what must go. You have some tough decisions ahead of you, but you're not alone. SCORE can help you, and there's a process that we will follow. So let's jump in. We're going to be talking about doing this in a 4-step process. We'll start with assess. You will start by looking at where you are now, financially first. You need to know where your business is today. That's your balance sheet, your assets and liabilities. Simply put, how much you have and how much you owe today. The next question is, how long can you last with what you have? That's your cash flow analysis. What are your options and what can or should you do about it? Then we'll move on to analyze. We'll look at your employees, your customers, your suppliers, your products and services. It's time to do a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. And threats. Now's the time to brainstorm and then to decide if it's time to pivot. Whether you plan to close or to survive and thrive, you need a plan. It's going to be based on the analysis that you're doing. You will build on what you have, what you've learned, and what you've decided. We're going to use the business model canvas as the tool to document your plan. Finally, communicate. You will share your plan with everyone who has or might have a vested interest. I watched a virtual town hall sponsored by the News Press, Naples Daily News, and WGCU Tuesday evening. They polled the audience a few times. I'll share some of the results with you as we go through this webinar. I'll also give you homework as we look at each step to help prepare you for each of the upcoming webinars. Let's start with your assessment. We're going to start with your financial situation. Most small businesses pay attention to their income and expenses, but often not much to their balance sheet. Your balance sheet is where you identify all your assets and liabilities. Your assets include everything you own: cash, bank accounts, money owed to you, inventory, equipment, everything. Liabilities are everything you owe to employees, to vendors, to banks. If your balance sheet isn't current, get it current. I see so many clients that are months behind in recording their financial data. This is not the time to do that. There's no way you can make an informed decision without knowing where your business is financially. Since the tax filing deadline was yesterday, you may have just completed your 2019 financial data. Now's the time to bring it up to date. Your balance sheet is the picture of where you are today. If your business is upside down, as in this picture, and you already have a lot of debt, be very careful about taking on more, though I will say a few words later about refinancing possibilities. Your cash flow will help you look into the future to see how long you can last based on your estimates of income and expenses. It's based on your starting cash balance today, and using this tool, you will experiment with different assumptions. For this exercise, you can use your own financial software or an Excel spreadsheet. You'll start with available cash and do a month-by-month projection of income and expenses, checking your bottom line every month. Keep in mind that September is typically the slowest month of the year for businesses in Southwest Florida. Look at your data from previous years and see if that's also true for you. One of the questions from the poll I mentioned earlier was, do you think Florida opened too early, too late, or right on time? 82% said too early, 5% said too late, 13% said right on time. How might that affect your forecasting? In next week's webinar, Henry McCabe and Ashley Hartman will go through more in-depth on your balance sheet and your forecasting cash flow. You'll learn how to use your financial information to assess the current state of your business and how to use that information to make critical decisions about closing, surviving, or thriving. To help you prepare for that webinar, let's look at some preliminary work you can do regarding your expenses. Zig Ziglar, noted for his famous observation, said, "Money isn't everything, but it ranks right up there with oxygen." I like that. Let's start with some really basic rules. Rule number 1, cash is king. Don't spend a dime you don't have to. You may need it next month, or 3 months, or 6 months down the road. Conserve your cash. Rule number 2, cut early. Rule number 3, cut big. These are pretty basic. We may be in this recession for a while. We may shut down again. You may already have too little cash. Conserve cash wherever you can. So let's look at your expenses. It's time to get out the scissors. Here we go. As you work through your cash flow, you need to question and challenge every expense. Your office lease, let's take that. What category does that fit into? Is your current space a must-have? Are there options? Do you need to keep it? Can you move into a smaller space? Zoom has taught us a lot about working from home. As a matter of fact, a company called Global Workplace Analytics predicts that within the next 2 years, 6 times as many people will regularly work from home as did before. Can you share space? Can you renegotiate your lease or get a free month or two? What about storage leases? I want you to go through every expense the same way. This is also not the time to tie up your money in inventory. Do you have multiple loans that can be combined or refinanced? We have a client who recently saved thousands of dollars in monthly loan repayments by consolidating multiple loans and extending the repayment schedule. If you currently have one of the SBA loans, the 7A 504 microloan, SBA right now will pay 6 months of principal, interest, and fees that you owe. And if you get one of those as a new loan that's dispersed prior to September 27th, 2020, they'll do the same. Would that help you? If it would, go to sba.gov to learn about them. And also the SBA link will be listed on our resource page. The Paycheck Protection Program application has been extended until August 8th. The terms are easier to get more expenses forgiven. Would that help you? What else can you try to renegotiate? Are there less expensive options, like perhaps on the internet? Can you get anything free? Is it time to compare the costs of what you buy? Can you run more efficiently? Be realistic, nothing is safe. A few words about payroll, that's a tough one. For the small business, your employees are like family. We used to have a term, keepers, your key personnel, the ones you wanted to keep. What's the impact of cutting payroll or reducing benefits? What about if it's just temporary? Are you paying people to do what you should be doing because you don't like it? Marketing, cold calls. Unless they can do it much better than you and are paying for themselves, you really need to rethink that. Take multiple passes. What else can you cut back or cut out? You're going to use this analysis to keep going back to your forecasting model, your cash flow analysis, and you will see if you need a cash infusion to survive. Don't forget to come back next week to get help with that. I'm going to use the term restart review, where review means to view again. It's time to take another look at it. We've spent time talking about your financial assessments. It's time to take an honest look at your business and brainstorm to develop ideas that will help you move forward. You're going to look at your employees, your customers, your suppliers. We're going to revisit products and services. Let's start with where you are today and use a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Then it's time to brainstorm, and then to decide if you can and should pivot. So just as your financial analysis was a two-part process, where you are today, your balance sheet told you, and then your cash flow predicted the future, this is also a two-part process. The SWOT analysis will tell you where you are now, and the brainstorming can help you see what the future looks like. So let's start analyzing your business. Strengths and weaknesses are internal factors and may fall into either category or both. The questions above should get you thinking critically about your business. How do your personnel, products, services, customers, location, price, expenses, financial situation, assets, liabilities, branding, reputation, how do all these things factor into your strengths and weaknesses? What makes you special? Why do people buy from you? Sometimes the same thing falls into both categories. They're flip sides of the same coin. A strength may be a great location for your business. The weakness, a very expensive lease. And please don't tell me that quality is your strength. That's a given. And if quality isn't, then it's a weakness. Opportunities and threats are external factors over which you have little or no control, but need to be factored into your plan to go forward. They may fall into either or both categories also. Your competition, government regulations, the pandemic, new trends, changes in demographics, new markets. And again, a threat to some may be an opportunity for others. Let's remember, you're the experts in your industry. How do you think the industry will change because of this crisis? What do you think people will need in the future? There's a TED Talk by Bill Gross. He's the founder of Idea Lab, which he titles "The Single Biggest Reason Why Startups Succeed." By the way, we had some questions about whether this was a good time to start a business. We'll discuss that later, but Bill Gross applies 5 different factors to hundreds of startups. He considers the idea, the team, the business model, funding, and timing. And spoiler alert, concludes the timing is the key factor in success. So now is the time to look really hard at opportunities. This could be your perfect moment. If you're interested in the link to this talk, it's on the resource page at the end of the webinar. You're also going to get a link to this webinar, so I'm not going to read these questions to you. Read and answer them later. Our third webinar, coming up in 2 weeks, presented by Walter McCracken, will give you an in-depth look at how to perform the SWOT analysis and give you more ideas for brainstorming to help you see a path forward. I hope you will join us. The quote, "If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change," from Wayne Dyer, and he's the author of 21 New York Times bestseller books. So look at the picture. Do you see 2 faces, or do you see the vase? Or do you see both? We're going to try to look at things in different ways. As you start that SWOT analysis, you could start it by yourself, but don't try and do it alone. You need input from other people. If you have employees, you will be amazed at their insights. They're the ones who hear the compliments, they listen to the critiques, they work with suppliers, they sell your products. If you've hired good people, listen to them. Ask your customers. Maybe it's a survey or a Zoom focus group. More likely it's a one-on-one call to your best customers. What do they like about your business? What would they like to see? What do they need? Once you've identified your business strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, it's time to figure out what to do with this information. So the next step is uncritical brainstorming that will allow all of these ideas to be captured. Everything gets written down. It's easy to talk about your strengths. It's harder to acknowledge your weaknesses. This is not the time to be defensive. You're problem solving. This is the time to listen, to think, to create. Be bold, be open. Try to see that there are no terrible ideas, only ideas that still need to be tweaked or combined with other ideas, or that can be built upon to lead other people to think of something else. Can you make it better? How can you make it better? This is a time to be creative, to think about things differently. Don't limit yourself or your team. These ideas are your stepping stones. Is your competition always a threat? Can they be an opportunity? Can they be a partner, even sometimes? When can you team up? If you're strong financially, are there opportunities to buy out your competition? If you're not strong, Could you partner with the right business? Or would you consider seeing if they might be interested in buying your business? Have you learned something from the pandemic that can be an opportunity for you? Always go back to think about what problems you are solving. Is there a better way to do what you do? If there is, find it now. What assumptions have changed? The pandemic has changed a lot of assumptions. You need cash on hand. What about growth potential, capacity, access to goods and services? In each of our lives, there have been life-altering events where we begin to talk about before and after, before we got married, before and after we had children, perhaps before and after someone died. In each case, there's become a new normal. This will be one of those, before and after the pandemic. What will your new normal look like? And by the way, this exercise is not a waste of time. I did this every December with my employees for 2 days. Then I went on to write a business plan and a marketing plan for the following year. We developed a plan to grow every year, and it paid off for us. Pivoting, this is one of my favorite subjects. Zig Ziglar said, "You don't drown by falling in water. You only drown if you stay there." We all fell in the water. Pivoting is about figuring out how to get out of it before you drown. I can't tell you how to pivot, but I can share some ideas about how others are pivoting. Perhaps it will spark ideas for your business. A short story about targeting a new market. I have a friend who was a potter, complaining about how hard it was to get slabs of clay perfectly even. Her husband, who's an engineer, built a slab roller, which they then began to sell to other potters. It got great reviews, gradually grew the business. After her brother suggested they make it food safe for commercial bakers, the husband made the alterations, and they then sold dough rollers to bakers. A minor change to their product opened up a new market. She doesn't make pottery anymore. The slab roller and dough rollers are their business now. How are people using your products? Do they ever tell you what they wish it had? Another idea. A bar known for their great drinks, unable to sell liquor, they made up drink mixes, froze them in ice cube trays, and sold the drink mixes. Customers added their liquor at home. They altered the process, changed the product so they could sell to their client base. A window cleaning business that grew from a 2-person, 1-truck business to 3 trucks and 12 employees. He got tired of hours on the phone every night scheduling, occasional sick employees, which threw everything off, expensive workman's comp, and no free time. He went back to 1 truck, 1 other employee. He says he makes more money and he got his life back. An event planner who organized 5K races that ended at microbreweries, sponsored by the breweries. When his business dropped to 0, he created virtual distance challenges, month-long themed runs. He designs creative running courses, charges $50 to $100 to register, depending on whether you buy the new monthly t-shirt or other accessories. He donates 10% of all proceeds to local COVID relief funds. In his first 3 months, he's registered over 2,400 runners. People want to feel safe now. How do you sell safety? What can you do to make people feel safer? There's a restaurant that put cameras in their kitchens. People could see how clean it was and how the food was being prepared. His customers felt safer. Other restaurant ideas. Is your restaurant famous for something? Homemade pasta? Sell it by the pound, or sell meal kits. Another restaurant made a YouTube video preparing a new menu item each week and then sold it as their carry-out special that week. Maybe your pivot is temporary, although it could become permanent in the future. A laundry service to Airbnbs started marketing to seniors and COVID patients, pick up and deliver. A wedding stationery store that began marketing change the date stationery. Motels that were used for isolation wards. Hotels offering a 40% discount for 14-day stays while you quarantine. And on the subject of hotels, I just heard about a hotel in Barbados where tourism virtually shut down. It's now advertising one-year rentals for people who are able to work remotely. Can you teach what you know? A nail salon developed YouTube for their customers on how to do nails, a 5 to 10 minute YouTube. But they worried that nail technicians would take advantage of them, so she offered extended classes for professionals and charged for it. Fitness classes. Can you exercise in the park? Do you have an asset that you can use differently? A truck to deliver something for yourself, something different, or for someone else? Do you know which products or services are most profitable? Now could be the time to get rid of any low margin sales. Keep only your most profitable products, temporarily or permanently. I've thrown out a few ideas just to get you thinking. This is the time to be creative. Whether you plan to close or believe you can survive and thrive, it's time to write it down. You're going to base it on the analysis you've been doing, building on what you have, what you've learned, what you've decided. Documenting your plan will help when you move to the next step, communication. And this is not time to write a 30-page document. Let's capture it on a single page. The business model canvas is a visual business tool that will help you structure all the building blocks of your business. At the broadest level, you're going to look at 4 categories. You'll start in the middle. Why does your company exist? And then, who do you or will you sell to? Then you'll define your resources, your supporting infrastructure, and finally identify and define the key numbers that will drive your business, your costs and your revenue. The 4 categories on the previous slide break into 9 areas that describe your business. During your analysis step, you've probably asked and hopefully answered many of the questions on this slide. You will start with your value proposition. What value are you providing to your customer? What problems are you solving? Then you're going to look at your customer segment, the relationships and the channels. Third category includes your key partners, your key activities, and your key resources. And finally, you're going to capture the cost structure and revenue streams. On August 6th, in our 4th webinar, Doug Barber from the Manassas SCORE chapter will walk you through this model and show you how to capture what you've learned. He's entitled Putting It All Together into an Actionable Plan, the Business Model Canvas. And this webinar will demonstrate a very rigorous process. I want you to think about the questions on this page and how you would answer them as you prepare for this webinar. This will become the basis for how you move forward. All right, so now it's time to communicate to your audiences. The decisions you made in planning will determine what, how, and with whom you must communicate. You will share it with everyone who has or might have a vested interest. Just because it's written doesn't mean it's written in stone. Everything is evolving now. But the important thing is to communicate and then communicate again if it changes. Businesses are like relationships. Are built on relationships. Know, like, and trust. Before someone wants to do business with you, they must know you. Then they like you before they will trust you. In-business clients should already be here. And this principle applies to everyone that you must communicate with. Your immediate issues are with the first groups on this list. I know there's a natural tendency to avoid the unpleasant, but the first group is critical if you are financially challenged now. They may be able to help you or offer some relief. Explain your situation. Ask for what you need. If they can't do that, ask them how they can help you. They may suggest something you didn't even think about. Your suppliers. What impact has COVID had on your suppliers? Overseas products may not be available or they may have long delays. Stateside, some companies may still be closed or have gone out of business. You need to communicate with your suppliers. You need to find out about whether items are in stock. Have lead times increased? It just took me 30 days last month to get blinds from a 2-day blind supplier for my home. Can you negotiate payment terms? Let's talk now about your employees. What do you see as the future of your business? Will your staff be available? Did you get paycheck protection program funds? Will they run out? What will happen now? What's your plan? Let's think about what your employees need now. Do they need childcare? I just heard this morning that 40% of daycare facilities may close. We all know that the reopening of schools is in question. How will they handle childcare? Given the uncertain times, are they receiving unemployment now? And they're reluctant to come back, afraid they'll need to go back on it again. Can they work from home or part-time? If they work from home, do they need equipment or materials or supplies, or do they need help setting it up? How will you address COVID-19 illnesses? Will your employees stay home? Will they get sick leave? Will they get paid? Workplace requirements may create new or additional assignments. Some may be limiting the number of people at the door, require wearing masks, doing additional cleaning. By the way, another polling question was, does a business policy on mask wearing for employees and customers influence your decision to shop there in person? This was the poll on Tuesday. 88% said yes. Keep that in mind. Listen to what your employees need and make sure you communicate what you need from them. As you deal with your employees and your customers, there are going to be some legal questions you need to consider. Our final webinar on August 20th, the Small Business Legal Challenges in the Age of COVID-19, presented by Patrick Neal, attorney at law, will address those. If you have questions for him or from any of the other presenters that are coming up, you can ask them when you respond to the survey that you're going to receive following this webinar. When you work on your plan, you identify target markets and the products and services to those markets. Have you identified new customer markets? How will you get into each of these? What have you done in the past that worked? And what didn't work? And do you know why? Money is tight. I've already recommended that you conserve cash. One size doesn't fit all. Your social media plan will be different if you have 100 followers or 100,000. As you consider how to address the issue of social media, another polling question was, have you done more online shopping since the coronavirus outbreak? 89% said yes. Keep that in mind. On August 13th, Sharon Schulman from the Southwest Florida SCORE chapter will present the In Business Guide to Tough Times, Marketing on a Dime. Join us for that webinar. Customers that know, like, and trust you will want you to survive. And at times, Perhaps you should consider marketing from a position of weakness. We're all struggling. Share your challenges, ask for help. There's a small family-run restaurant that many of our members in our community like. A neighbor posted on Facebook that they were struggling. Several others jumped in to say how good the food was and asked people to go there. We were reminded of them and we went for carryout. People do want to help when they can and when they know you need it. So let's wrap up. Regardless of what we wish, things will not go back to where they were for a while, perhaps not for a long while in some industries. During this webinar, you've seen a process you need to take and tools that will help you through that process. We've created follow-on webinars to help you work through each step in this process. During the assess phase, you'll capture where you are today financially on your balance sheet and how long your money can last going forward on your forecasting models. In the analysis phase, you capture where you stand today in terms of your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and brainstorm to find your best path forward, deciding if you can and should pivot. You're going to capture all of this in your plan and then communicate the plan to everyone who needs to know it. If you do decide to close, it is a sad time, but it does not mean you have failed. You will have made a hard decision given only bad choices. And you may be the lucky person 6 months from now. If you believe you can survive, you are in the process of developing a plan. Your goal is to last long enough to get through the pandemic and recession. And if you believe you found a way to pivot and thrive, go after it. We want to help you maximize your chances for success. Next slide. We are in an unimaginably challenging time. As you work your way through this maze, you are not alone. Wherever you are, we have SCORE mentors who will work through the process with you. There are 8 chapters in the SCORE district. To find a mentor, contact the SCORE chapter nearest you. These are the links to each one of those chapter websites. I want to share some of the resources that I think are valuable. SCORE website, first and foremost. There's information on loans, on grants, how banks might help you with existing loans. There are webinars, templates on dozens of topics. Spend some time exploring that website. SBA. In addition to loan information, there is a small business lender match tool. It's a free online tool that will connect you with SBA approved community development financial institutions and small lenders, and you get matched up in 2 days, it says. Lee Cares. Now, each county may have similar programs. There's grants for businesses. We have a question in the Q&A about that, and I'll say more then. You see the link to the talk, that TED Talk that Bill Gross gave? There's a link there to some of the legal issues that you may want to read about. And Florida Gulf Coast University has programs to help small businesses. Check out that link. Next slide. Every Thursday for the next 5 weeks at noon, because you registered for this webinar, you're registered for all of them. And we'll receive information and reminders the day before each one. Now, I have some questions that have already been submitted, and I'm going to take a stab at those first, and then as we have time, we'll look at some of the questions that may have been asked during this webinar. First question I saw, should you even consider starting a business during these times? Actually, we got a few of those. I think you can consider it. But you want to use the same 4-step process we talked about to make that decision. Financially, we're not going to talk so much about assets and liabilities as startup costs and how much cash you have. You're still going to do a cash flow analysis to see when you begin to break even or make money. Be careful about being overly optimistic. Then you're going to do a SWOT analysis to make sure you've identified your client base and know what problems you're solving for them. You may want to test your ideas before you commit. Business model canvas will help you work through your infrastructure. Who are your partners? What are your resources? And so on. And then how will you market your business? If you feel comfortable after that, go for it. Remember what Bill Gross TED Talk said. Timing is the single business reason for small business success. Is this the right time for your idea? Next question. Are there any money grants, loans, special finance programs for small businesses owned by women? I found one that's listed on the SCORE website, the Red Backpack Fund. It's 1,000 grants of $5,000 each, given away 200 per month. The next window for applying is August 3rd through 10th, and you can learn more about it on the SCORE website, the Red Backpack Fund. Also, in yesterday's newspaper, there's new opportunities for Collier County residents. Money from the CARES Act. Now, in that county, they said they've allocated $10 million for small businesses to relaunch and their rehire grants. It's a one-time grant for up to $25,000, and it will be, they'll begin to address it later in August. Now, having said that, each county in the state of Florida has now received funds from the CARES Act, but the counties are spending it differently. Many, but not all of them, are using it to give grants to small businesses. Larger counties got the money in March, smaller ones are just getting it now. Check out your county status on the CARES Act with information putting your county. Orange County, Seminole, Lee, Palm Beach, Pinellas, Polk, all offered some small business grants. Some may still be available, some are over, but also the new ones are just getting the money in. All right, the next question. I use my personal bank account for business. Can I apply for an EIDL loan? First of all, don't do that. Now, if you're a sole proprietor, did you claim your business income and expenses when you filed your taxes? If you did, use that information on the application form. It's not difficult to fill out. Another question, how do you survive when PPP funds run out before the season starts? This is hard. The process we've talked about doesn't depend on PPP or any other funding. You still need to take the same steps we've talked about today. If you can determine from a cash flow analysis that a cash infusion may help you survive after you've gone through the process, check out other loans, those SBA loans where the principal and interest are paid by the SBA for the next 6 months. Conserve cash, negotiate expenses, look for grants, ask for help, talk to SCORE mentors. Now, do we have some other questions?
Eileen,
we have a few minutes left.
Yes, we do have one question. It's from a new realtor in the area, and they've just started their business, and they're wondering if you have some specific suggestions or ideas for them.
I have a friend who just sold their house last week. So homes are selling, it's slow. People are using more video to sell homes, video tours. People are, because a lot of times people don't want to necessarily go directly into a lot of different homes. So I think video touring is probably important as a way of showing listings. You know, the 4-step process we've defined that we're looking at is going to apply to almost everyone. You may be a sole proprietor, and well, first of all, you may qualify for unemployment, and that may help you weather this time. You have SBA loans. If you're a new business, that's going to be hard. If you just started up after February, it's going to be very difficult. I think your best bet for the real estate market is the whole idea that people need to feel safe. So you go back to that and you think, how can I make people feel safe? And I think the video marketing may be something that will help you. Do we have another question?
Yes, we do. We now have a number of questions. Somebody would like to know about some more grants or loan information. They have been denied for PPP and EIDL. Does that forecast what they might expect for other grants or loans?
I guess it may depend on why they were rejected. If they were rejected because they have a very poor credit rating, that's going to be hard. And that's when you go to families, friends, and others for money. If it's not because if they have a good enough credit score, then I would start looking at some of the bank loans. The SBA loans, check out the SBA website. In some cases, the interest rate may later be a little bit higher, but initially there won't be any interest that you'll be paying. And so I think your best bet, I would not give up just because you didn't get those 2 loans. Look at the other 3 loans. The micro loans, you might get smaller amounts.
Okay, thank you. We have another question. I started an insurance business in November of 2019, but didn't have any revenue to report and minimal in 2020. Is there any help for me? I am going into debt personally.
If you're in the state of Florida and you applied for unemployment, you're not the only one in this situation. If you applied for unemployment and had a track record of income from last year that would qualify you for unemployment, you know that you get both the state amount and the $600 from the federal government. And there's talk about extending the $600. It's in the House. Senate hasn't taken it up yet, but that may extend the unemployment. Without any income, I think most people are getting rejected for the PPP. I do know some people that have gotten some EIDL money, and the EIDL, depending on why they turned you down, you might be able to contact the SBA directly. And in some cases I've heard about where they got turned down, a conversation with the SBA, and they did get some money. So try that again.
So somebody just mentioned that the EIDL can be, you can apply for being reconsidered for the EIDL. So thank you very much for suggesting that. A gentleman wants to know, Eileen, what you think of the sign spinners outside of a retail establishment to drive traffic to that retail establishment.
I don't have an answer for that. I don't know whether it works or doesn't work.
Yeah.
And by the way, about the PPP loan, that is still open. There's still money in it. If you haven't already applied, I think I mentioned it earlier, but you may have missed it. If you haven't already applied, it's going to be open through a date in August. And so apply for that.
Yes. Yes. With regards to the sign spinners, I would suggest that they may work for you. They certainly will grab attention, but that should not be your only means of trying to draw traffic or grow awareness. So I would look at other ways to do that, whether it's through digital marketing or some type of lead generation to bring traffic to you other than the spinners. We have a person who—
wait a minute, I just want to say something. Someone else has just reminded me, the deadline for the PPP is August 8th.
Great.
So if you haven't applied, do it.
Great.
If you think you qualify.
Great. Another person is a sole proprietor and they do have a PPP loan. They'd like to know if they could also apply for unemployment at the same time.
You can't double dip. So
Okay.
if the employment is at a different time from when you were getting the PPP, you may be able to. I would check on that, but you can't get both at the same time.
Yeah.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
This is not legal advice. That's my understanding. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Someone would like you to please repeat the Collier County grant scenario that you referred to earlier.
It was just in the newspaper yesterday. And it was in the news press yesterday. And what they said is that they're allocating $10 million for small business for relaunch and rehire grants. There'll be one-time grants of up to $25,000. And right now, because they've received a lot of money, they're doing it in a phased process. So the small business grants will not be available till later in August. And I would go and look up Collier County CARES Act and see what you can find specifically about all the information. I think since it was just announced yesterday, there may not be a lot on it yet. And when I looked on, I did an internet search on it yesterday, I found very little. I had just read it in the newspaper, in the news press.
All right, and then we have one last question, which was, is Facebook marketing all that it's cracked up to be?
Ooh, that's a question for Sharon. I think it depends. Are you using ads? Do you have followers? I have a client that had something like 30,000 followers. It was fabulous for her. If you're not relying on ads, I have people that have 10 Facebook followers and I wouldn't recommend it. If you're relying on ads, I think it depends on how well you identify your target market, how good your ad is, how competitive and reasonably priced your product is. So, and whether it's something that people need right now. So there's not a single answer for that, but there's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
And Sharon should be asked in a few weeks, come back and ask Sharon and see if she says something different.
Yes, she also, this same person asks how to convert likes into purchases. And I'm just going to say that's we need more information than that to answer that question. We need to understand what the offer is, who the audience is, et cetera, to answer that very specifically. But it's a great question. Someone would like to know, is it possible to accept both PPP and EIDL at the same time?
Yes and no. If you got the EIDL emergency loan, that money has to be, you can't double dip. So to the extent that money was $1,000 per employee, that gets deducted from the payroll protection program in your forgiveness part. But it's, you'll have to look at the forgiveness application and read it through. You can't, the basic rule is you can't double dip, but you may be able to qualify for both.
Okay, great. Any more questions?
All right.
Great. Thank you so much, Eileen. That was fantastic. Oh, someone suggested the PPP and EIDL can happen at the same time as long as EIDL is not used for payroll.
For payroll, that's right. That's true.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Please come back, same time, same place, next Thursday.
All right. And remember your SCORE mentors. Ask for help. Take care and good luck to all of you. Goodbye.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.